This is Brother Peter Diamond, VaticanCatholic.com. Is the current oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico predicted in the apocalypse? That's what I want to talk about in this video. This discussion is not part of our Is the World About to End video, but is a separate discussion, even though it's obviously perhaps related to it. As basically everyone knows, there's a catastrophic oil spill that's occurring right now in the Gulf of Mexico, which is leading the news, especially here in America. It has the potential to be the worst oil spill of all time. It's already the worst environmental disaster in American history, and I think we might be seeing what is predicted in Apocalypse chapter 8, verse 8. In Apocalypse 8, 8-9, we read this, quote, "And the second angel sounded the trumpet, and as it were a great mountain, burning with fire, was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood, and the third part of those creatures died which had life in the sea, and the third part of the ships was destroyed." End quote. In Apocalypse 8, 8-9, we read that something which appears to be a great mountain in the sea was burning, and that as a result of what appeared to be a mountain burning in the sea, a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the creatures which had life in the sea died. Well, you can see the pictures from this oil spill. You can clearly see how the waters actually, in many cases, look like blood. Here are some of the images where, as a result of the oil in the water and in the marshlands, the sea looks like it's filled with blood. So visually, the oil spill looks exactly like what St. John described. Furthermore, we read in Apocalypse 8, verse 8, that the cause of this problem, in which the sea is turned into blood, is something which appears to be, quote, "as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea," end quote. And so he says that something that looks like a great mountain burning with fire in the sea. Well, the recent oil spill was caused by an explosion on an offshore oil drilling platform in the sea. And here are the pictures of the original explosion. You can see it looks like a mountain in the sea that's burning with fire. And keep in mind that they didn't have offshore oil drilling platforms in St. John's day. And so if he was shown a vision of this event, what else would he describe it as besides something that looks like a mountain on fire in the sea? Here's another picture. And so St. John says it seems to be, or it looks like, as it were a mountain burning with fire in the sea. And so the cause of this also seems to fit with what is prophesied. Now, is this the fulfillment? I don't know. It might be the fulfillment. I would say that it would really depend on how bad this gets. If this thing continues to spread, and it doesn't look like they can stop the oil gushing until at least August, and possibly not until December. And what's different about this oil spill from most major oil spills is that this was not an oil tanker that went down or exploded or leaked. This is an offshore operation where they're plugged into the earth, they're plugged into the sea floor, and so the oil just keeps coming, and they don't know exactly how much is coming. According to some estimates, 4 million gallons a day could be gushing. If that's the case, if this continues for some time, it will be the worst oil spill of all time. And there's talk that it could go up the East Coast, and if they can't get a handle on it, who knows how much water it could pollute. But already it has polluted 1/3 of the sea in which the oil spill occurred. 1/3 of the Gulf of Mexico is already off limits for fishermen, and it's only going to spread because the spill has just begun. And we see the sad images of the animals who are dying as a result of the oil spill, the creatures which had life in the sea dying. And it also says in Apocalypse 8:9 that the third part of the ships was destroyed. Well, how could that be fulfilled? Well, we hear about it in the news. All of the fishermen who made their living in those areas of the sea, as well as other industries and businesses which are connected to that area of the sea, their livelihoods have been destroyed. Their ships, for all intents and purposes, have been destroyed. And if this continues to spread, and more of the fishing industry is destroyed, the same will be the case wherever the oil goes. And to get an idea of just how bad this oil spill is, we should consider the following. The 1989 Exxon Valdez oil spill in the area of Alaska spilled about 11 million gallons of oil, and it is widely considered to be the most devastating man-made environmental disaster in history because of the wildlife that was affected, etc. Well, the current catastrophe in the Gulf and the oil coming from it produces the equivalent of an Exxon Valdez spill about once a week, with no known endpoint because it just keeps coming out of the ground. Another point that's very interesting is if we think about this prophecy about the sea turning into blood, and this is not the only verse which speaks about it. In Apocalypse chapter 16, verse 3, we read, quote, "And the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and there came blood as it were of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea." End quote. This verse, Apocalypse 16:3, seems to be a restatement of Apocalypse 8, verse 8 to 9. It doesn't mention a third of the sea, but it seems to parallel it because the next verse also talks about the rivers and fountains of waters turning into blood, and that's what follows Apocalypse 8, 8 to 9. Regardless, if one believes that these verses, or one of these verses about the sea turning into blood, will have a physical fulfillment as opposed to a purely spiritual fulfillment, how would that be manifested? And manifested in a way that the general population of the world would not see it as miraculous or a sign from God. For example, God could, of course, literally turn the waters into blood from out of nowhere. But it would be hard to imagine a scenario where that would occur and the majority of the world would not recognize this as something miraculous, as a sign from God. But an oil spill, which turns the waters into what looks like blood and kills life in the sea, is also something that the general population can consider to be an accident. It is something that could fulfill what is prophesied, yet not alarm the general population which is not looking for the signs of the times. And what besides an oil spill could possibly turn the waters into blood, or what looks like blood? It's difficult to imagine another scenario. And so is this Gulf oil spill the fulfillment of Apocalypse 8, 8 to 9, and/or Apocalypse 16, verse 3? Time will tell. But the fact that it is occurring now is interesting, to say the least, at the same time that other things which are discussed in our Is the World About to End video series, which we feel very strongly about, are also being fulfilled, in our opinion. Finally, I think that this Gulf oil spill reveals something else that's important. It refutes the myth of peak oil and the false idea that America lacks natural resources, and it demonstrates that there is indeed a conspiracy to keep America reliant on foreign countries for oil and other resources. Just look at the amount of oil that is gushing from this one offshore well. Imagine if our country had dedicated its resources and energy to safe drilling for our own use, and how much that would have done economically for this country and would have eliminated the reliance on foreign powers. The fact that all of this oil is right off our shores and what we're seeing is coming from just one well is quite revealing.